don't talk every day, but when we do, I'm loving everything.
What's going on, everybody? It is your boy, Some Random Dentist, and I am back with some more advice. So this is video 2, and I want to talk to you guys about how to turn your dream of becoming a dentist into a reality from the non-traditional approach or standpoint. So before I even do that, gosh, I got to give you guys an update. So my partner and I, we moved, and we moved out of our house, and we moved into an apartment, and I've got a couple of things in storage, and I've got some things here, and so it's been kind of a whirlwind right now because I'm trying to get everything ready to move to Augusta, which is where I'll be for the next 4 years going to dental school. So excuse my face, my hair, I got a lot going on. It just hasn't been a really it just hasn't been a relaxing couple of days for me. So anyway, let's get to the nitty gritty. So you guys have heard the words or the word non-traditional and the words non-traditional applicant, non-traditional student, and yes, it exists. Yes, to some degree, everyone is non-traditional, but I want to gear this advice towards non-traditional students who are a lot older, who aren't matriculating directly from undergrad to dental school, and to those who may have had some certain life circumstances that didn't give them the traditional route. So I'm going to try my best to give you guys some concrete advice and some no-frills advice, some life hacks on how you can actually make this thing realistic for yourself and to actually stay the course. So let's just go ahead and get to it. All right. So here's the first thing that you want to do. My first tip to you guys, my first suggestion, and this is probably the most important suggestion to you, is to make sure that you do your research. And this involves you shadowing. This involves you going out to different events that are sponsored by either ASDA or by either your shadowing dentist or whoever, so that you can get exposure into the life of a dentist and figure out what that dentist does. So let's talk about shadowing a little bit. When I first started out, I was still working, which by part a lot of non-traditional students are still doing. And I didn't have a lot of time during the day, of course, to go and shadow a dentist during normal working hours. And so what I had to do is I had to go out and network with dentists on my own and figure out if there were dentists who had hours over the weekend, or if I could shadow them during holiday breaks, or sometimes I would even dip into my own personal time off and I would just go take this time off to shadow. So whatever it took for me to fit the bill, that's what I did. And honestly, it gave me the best perspective because I felt like I was able to see the good, the bad, and the ugly sides of dentistry in terms of, what a practitioner does day to day, how they run budgets, how they manage and schedule patients, and how they work together as a team. And so I felt like I was able to see in those instances how I would fit into the profession, because I also, did a self-inventory while I was watching them. I said, well, I like to talk a lot. I like to educate people. I'm a lifelong learner. I like to work with my hands, so I know how to cut hair and I know how to do hair. So those are all of the things that made me feel like I was a good fit for the job. So I kind of took that and went with it, and I tried to keep that in the back of my mind throughout this entire journey. So in addition to doing your research, you also want to make sure that you read a lot about the profession. Use YouTube and Google. Those two things were my best friend in terms of figuring out where I wanted to be financially and how to actually run a business. So there are a lot of podcasts out there. I like Dental Town with Dr. Howard Ferran. He's a pretty informative guy. The student loan planner, Travis Hornsby, studentloanplanner.net or .com. I think the website is either one of those two. He talks a lot about how students can manage their debt loads once they finish dental school. So, looking at those things helped me get a better understanding of the animal or the big fat gorilla in the room that I'd soon have to tackle later on, so that once I got out of school, I wasn't setting high or extremely high expectations for myself to be this unicorn dentist that most people aspire to be. So I just wanted to keep it real with myself. And then thirdly, in terms of the first piece of advice is I wanted to make it a point to emphasize that it's so important to go and build relationships and network with these dental schools now, and to show them that you're interested and to show them that you want to go and visit. That's exactly what I did in my journey. I wanted to make sure that they knew who I was and that they knew what I was working against so that they could give me the best piece of advice. Because let's face it, going on the Student Doctor Network can be a grab bag of things. You know, you've got a lot of people on there giving you perspective from the standpoint of a student, and none of them have really endured anything close to dental school yet. So you've got to make sure that you're networking with these schools so that you're getting the most relevant and up-to-date information. And it also makes you less conscious of yourself so that you don't feel like you have to prepare or overly prepare or compare yourself to someone that you've never met before. So just remember those tips when it comes to researching. Also, you want to make sure that you start looking at what it is that you'd like out of a dental school. So I try to keep it very short and sweet in terms of what I wanted. I knew that I wanted to be in dental schools on the East Coast because being close to my family and being in a certain region of weather was very important for me. And I also wanted to go to a school that had a low cost rate. So I knew that from the get-go, these schools are going to be a little bit more expensive than, most schools. I mean, not expensive, competitive to other schools. So I knew that I was going to have to do my due diligence in getting the best grades that I could get possible with what I had. So make sure in a nutshell that you are preparing and that you're constantly researching and that you're constantly reading about the dental profession so that you can expose yourself to as many topics as possible. Because, turns out you may not even like dentistry or you may not even find any of it interesting. So do your due diligence. All right. So the second life hack or the second piece of advice that I have for you is to save as much money as possible. Because although, working full time and managing, an adult life and managing a family is just expensive in itself, it really helps if you start to put yourself on a more realistic yet practical budget for when it comes time to apply and travel to dental schools. So, for example, what I did is I used the app Mint, and I linked it to my bank account. And it allowed me to see what was going in my bank account and what was coming out of my bank account in terms of just retail, in terms of gas, in terms of fast food, in terms of groceries and bills, you name it. It gave me the breakdown. And being that I'm a really visual person, it helps a lot for me if I can see things in a way that's a little bit more spatial and if it's charted versus if I'm just kind of, thinking in my mind, all right, I spent $5 here. So how in the world did I spend $50 at Walmart? So you've got to make sure that you break down your finances in a way that works for you. The next tidbit in terms of finances that I want to harp on is to make sure that you check your credit report. And this isn't to say that I had any errors in mine, but many dental students are going to take out two different types of loans. You're either going to take out the unsubsidized Forward Direct loan, which is not a credit-based loan, or you're going to take out the Plus loan, the Grad Plus loan. And the Grad Plus loan is a credit-based loan, so they will check to see if you have any adverse items on your credit report. So you don't want to get all the way through the cycle, or you don't want to get all the way to the finish line and then have to, have your offer rescinded because you can't pay for dental school. You want to make sure that you are best suited for the circumstance by making sure your credit is on point. To also piggyback off of that, make sure that you pay your credit cards off. Don't go into dental school with any debt. And if at all possible, you need to try to make sure that if you get a tax return, if you get, some lump sum of money, try to make sure that you put it away and save for this application process as it is. Because I'm telling you, I spent $5,000, including all of my DAT materials, taking the DAT twice, traveling to dental school interviews, paying for lodging, paying application fees, and paying the deposit. And so that took a really big toll on me. And I'm so glad that I was able to save like $100 a paycheck a month because, even though it wasn't as much as I would have liked for it to have been, it really did offset some of the costs that I had to endure while I was applying to dental school. So just to, be realistic, just make sure that you can put something away and make sure that you are looking at ways to save. I know I did by not going on certain trips, not, buying a lot of clothes, not eating out. I think my partner and I, we ate out once a month, and we tried to make that budget as realistic as possible. And at the same time, still enjoy somewhat of a life because, you are an adult and you're going to have, a life that isn't going to stop just because you're applying to dental school. So, try to enjoy that. The next tidbit of advice I have is for you guys to make sure that you are resourceful with your time. And what I mean by that is to be in the moment. As non-traditional students or as non-traditional applicants, we don't have a lot of time to spend with friends and family. So, I used to love to go to Taco Tuesday, Wind Down Wednesday, Fantastic Friday, and, kick it. That was just my thing. But knowing that I had class straight after work at 5:30 to 6:45 and then a lap from 7 to 10, I knew that that wasn't going to work because I had students' papers to grade and I also had my own, I had my own coursework to study for. So it just wasn't going to cut it. I think the best piece of advice that I have to give when it comes to time is just to make sure that you get into a rhythm and make sure that the rhythm works for you, and don't try to overextend yourself into, taking too many classes, but you want to take enough to show the dental school admissions committees that you are capable of handling hard sciences amongst other responsibilities. I know that I took 2 science classes. I made it a note to take at least 2 classes a semester, and there was a semester where I had 3 classes, and that was really tough. But you want to make a note to, show them that you can do well under those constraints, and to also just plan your life accordingly. It also helps if you have a partner, if you have family in your life who understand that this is an adventure for you and they are able to support you in any way possible, but you are also willing to budget your time in a way where it works for the both of you to see each other, because you are not the only one that's going through this process. They are as well, and they want the best for you, and they want to see you grow, and they want to see you win. So you've got to be able to put in the legwork to make this work for the both of you. And I feel like, in addition to that, you have to have an emotionally and financially mature partner to help you endure this journey as well. Because if you don't have a solid ground with your partner, then you're probably not going to get as far in this with them as you would have liked for them to. So it's just really important that, if you do have someone special in your life, that they are aware that this is going to take a lot of time out of your day and from them as well. And they have to be ready for that. And if they aren't ready for that, then, obviously you're going to have a real conversation about where you may stand with that person, and give them the freedom to, move on to whatever they want to do with their life. So just keep that in mind as well. All right, so the next piece of advice that I have for you guys is to be strategic in everything that you do in this journey. So being strategic is going to work out in that you are going to save a lot of money, you're going to save a lot of time, and you're going to know exactly what your steps are going to lead you to. So what I mean by that is to make sure that, every single moment that you spend studying, make sure that it is a moment that is going to be worthwhile. And so you're going to have to learn a lot about yourself in terms of how you study and how well you work with others. Being a teacher, it was obviously easy for me to know my study style because that's what I do all day. I teach students how to get information pretty quickly, and I give it to them in a way that is kid friendly. So you're going to have to make sure that you learn what works for you, and you're going to have to make sure that you learn how to study efficiently alone. So, I'm a spatial learner and I am a visual person, and I have to see concepts. I have to draw them out. I have to map them out. I have to go to certain places, and I have to remember that this is where I learned that fact in that specific spot. And I have to be able to recall that so I can, do well on these exams that these professors give you. And to make a note about the professors, being a non-traditional student, you don't necessarily have a say in the type of professor you will have at 5:30 in the evening, because you don't have that luxury, or you don't have that flexibility of what an undergraduate normally would when it comes to picking your instructor. So a lot of times you may be left with an instructor who has been rated poorly on Rate My Professor, or you might have had a lot of hearsay about that professor in terms of how they teach and how inflexible they may be. But you've got to make it a point to not let that hinder you and get in the way of what you need to get done. So, for example, I never left my success in the hands of any professor or anyone. I always made it a point to go onto YouTube, Google. I used Study Blue, Anki cards. I used Khan Academy. I used Clutch Prep. I paid subscriptions to every single thing, you name it. I was doing it. I was going to tutorials. I was going to, they call them at Georgia State, SI, supplemental instruction. I made sure that I utilized every single resource, because when that transcript came out, I did not want to have to feel like I did not do my entire best to earn the A or the B plus. And trust me, I wasn't going lower than that. So, again, make sure that you are being resourceful with your time and that you are doing the best that you can to get the grade by any means necessary. And it's also a really good idea as a non-traditional student to keep the schools that you want to apply to updated with your status, so that they can kind of get an idea of who you are and what you've been dealing with as an applicant throughout this journey. And I know that worked for me at a couple of schools. And I know that once I got into my interview, it felt more natural. I felt like I was able to, have more of a conversation than an interview in itself. So, you want to make sure that you set those guidelines for yourself, very soon in this cycle. All right, so let's go ahead and add another life hack to this video. And that is going to piggyback off of my last suggestion in terms of being strategic, but making sure that you network with your professors. That took me very far in this journey because it allowed for me to get really good letters of recommendation from them, and it allowed me to develop really good study habits as well. So I'm the type of person, I'm not going to pretend like I'm the smartest person in the room. I'm not going to pretend like I know everything, because I really don't, but I will say that I am very confident in myself, knowing that if I do need help, I'm going to figure out how to get that help the best way that I can. So as a non-traditional student, again, we don't have flexibility in choosing when we're going to take our classes. So you're going to have to make sure that you pull from every single resource that you can. And you also want to make it a point to your professor to cross-reference what he or she says in class or puts in the notes with what you found online, so that you are finding the best way to study for the class. Because what that is doing is, number one, painting the narrative for yourself that you are resourceful and that you're a responsible student. And you are going to give yourself the ammunition when it comes time to ask your professor, um, that they can write you a strong letter and give you the recommendations that you need to convince the committees at dental schools that you are highly capable of completing this coursework in the time frame that you are given. So that's what I tried to do. So in addition to asking for letters of recommendation, I tried to ask for these letters of recommendation at the end. And I wanted to make a point at the beginning when I first met the professors that, I am a non-traditional student. So, if that took me calling off work, calling the sub, and, going to meet up with a professor during their office hours that were clearly during the school day, I did it. And I do not feel badly about it at all because it was all in good work. So, making sure that you're building those relationships takes you really far. And I mentioned that earlier when it came to networking with dental schools, because people want to know you. People want to see you. People connect with people that they have something familiar to the most. So doing that will save you a lot of time and energy. In addition to asking for letters of recommendation, always have a backup plan, because there are going to be some professors who may promise you a letter. There may be professors who may say, I can't write you a letter despite you even earning an A in the class. So you want to make sure that you have a backup plan to where you can actually go and get reputable letters from professors who you can trust and who can write these strong letters for you as well. Because you want to make it known that you are not the traditional applicant and that you are very serious about your education. In addition to asking for these letters, you want to also make sure that at the end of taking your biology, chemistry, organic chemistry series, that you start reviewing these terms or reviewing these concepts really quickly, because you want to go ahead and take the DAT. You want to start preparing for the DAT immediately. I know the first time I took the DAT, I made a really big mistake because I felt like if I was spending 10 hours a day studying mechanisms and working out problems and memorizing formulas, then I was going to do well on the DAT. And as a matter of fact, I didn't necessarily bomb the DAT, but my score was pretty average and it wasn't competitive as I want it to be. So, making sure that you develop a really good study strategy for the DAT is really helpful. And so, asking other students and asking them what worked for them helped me, figure out how to work Study Blue and Anki. Those are apps that you can order on your iPhone or your Android device. So look them up. They're pretty cool. And a lot of times you can find flashcards on these apps that were made specifically for the DAT by other students. So, not reinventing the wheel can really benefit you in certain situations where you're strapped for time, because again, there's somebody out there who has created the material. So all you've got to do is go out there and find it. In addition to that, you want to make sure that you don't spend as much time in one sitting studying for the DAT as you would think to do. And at least for me, that was the case, because I found myself getting really fatigued after work. I found myself getting really frustrated and not having the energy to push through. And I felt like I was, studying in circles. In other words, I was just looking at the same thing over and over again and not understanding it, versus taking mini breaks and trying to pace myself. So, you definitely want to make sure that you build in a little bit of a safety net for that. So in addition to preparing and taking the DAT, you want to make sure that you start writing a good personal statement. And I would say that's most important just because of the fact that dental schools want to get an idea of who you are and what you're bringing to the table through your essay. And that's kind of the only piece that you have to really explain yourself outside of the numbers. So I took 13 attempts at writing my personal statement. I wrote it 13 times, and I'm not ashamed to say that. And it's only because, even as an English teacher, I feel like I'm a really good writer, but I felt like 4,500 characters just wasn't enough space for me to really articulate why I wanted to become a dentist and what is it in me that's so special that would make me the best candidate for the job. Like I've never written for anything like that, so it was pretty difficult. So my suggestion would be to, write it, give yourself a couple of days to take space and time from it, and then come back to it with a fresh pair of eyes, ready to, read against the grain. Another strategy that worked for me was allowing other people to read my statement who weren't necessarily, educated, or I don't want to say educated, but who weren't per se English teachers or naturally gifted writers themselves. Like I wanted regular people to read my statement so that it sounded like it was natural and it sounded like it made sense. So I gave it to a couple of family members and I gave it to one person that I worked with at my job. And they were able to give me some really helpful feedback and criticism as well. So guys, this is it. I've gone on for way too long in this video and I don't want to take up any more space. So if you have any questions or comments, just leave them in the box below and I will do my best to answer them in a timely manner. I don't know when the next time would be for me to create a video. I'm going to try to do one after the first month of school so I can at least give you guys an idea of what my regimen is like or what, happens for me day to day. And just keep me in your prayers. Be looking out for me. You can follow me on Instagram at some brandom guy. That's all together, SOMEBRANDOMGUI. And I'll be doing my best to at least give you snippets of my life and what it's like to be a first-year student doctor at the Dental College of Georgia. So with all that being said, I'll take care. See you next time.